She's pretty terrifying. How did she react to that language? Because I don't think I've ever heard her use the C word, and she uses it quite liberally in this.
She was fine. I mean, it was never even raised as an issue. And the same with the, you know, what she does in the scene as well was like, yeah, fine. Let's do it.
Neil Marshall, great to chat with you today. Thanks for your time.
Good to be here.
So your new movie, Duchess, out in cinemas on the 9th of August. Can you briefly sum up the story for us?
It's the story of an East End London girl, a small-time crook, who meets up and falls in love with a diamond smuggler. He is betrayed and she seeks revenge and takes over the cartel.
Now, fans of yours are going to be familiar with Charlotte Kirk, who stars. She starred in The Reckoning back in 2020 and also The Lair as well, just a few years ago. Did you always have her in mind? Because obviously she's co-written as well in the past and now. Was she the woman that you wanted on screen?
Well, it's weird. It's the third film that we made together, but it's actually the first one we kind of came up with together. So back in 2018, we were eating sushi in London somewhere, and we were having a discussion about gangster movies in general, and the idea came up of like, well, what would happen if we did like a female Scarface? And that was kind of the original seed, and then by the end of that year there was a script and it kind of developed from there. But then we ended up doing The Reckoning first, and then The Lair, obviously COVID in between, so we finally got to be in a position to get this one made and shot it in 2022.
And I think it's fair to say she kicks ass in Duchess.
I think that's pretty fair. She put in a lot of work with the training and to try and be as convincing as possible, for sure.
Yeah, there's a great line. One of the standout lines for me was when she says, "Scarlett's dead, my name is Duchess." It reminded me of the Janet Jackson line in Nasty, where she says, "My first name ain't baby, it's Janet. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty." It's that kind of vibe. I loved it. It's brilliant. Girl power.
Yeah, when she starts owning that nickname. Yeah.
Now, you're of course familiar for directing horror movies. The Descent is one of the best genre movies of all time. I think it's always in the lists of, horror fans' favorite horror films. Did you want to have a breather from horror? I know you have done other films that aren't strictly horror, maybe horror themed films, or maybe elements of horror in your action films as well. Will you go back to it at some point, do you think?
If the right project comes along, absolutely. I'm not adverse to doing that. It's just I never really wanted to be specifically known as a horror director. It's too easy to get pigeonholed in this business. So right from the start, when I had the opportunity, I did Doomsday and I did Centurion, and although I kind of bring my horror sensibilities to the action and some of the violence in my work, I wanted to explore a lot of different genres along the way, and doing a crime thriller or a gangster movie was always one of those things I wanted to do at some point. Being a big fan of Scorsese's work, early Guy Ritchie stuff and like that. So, it's all kind of in there. And primarily, actually, for this movie, it was like I wanted to make it feel like a gangster movie from the 70s. So I gave it a kind of strong vibe of that, the Costa del Crime kind of thing, and with the music and the typefaces on the fonts and things like that. So I love that 70s vibe. Yeah,
that definitely comes across, and it is really exciting, actually, all the way from the start. I felt myself, I was captivated by the action in it and the story, so it kept me entertained throughout, right from the very beginning. It's very kind of wham bam, straight in there. There's no hanging around. I mean, that opening scene is really great when it comes to dynamics of direction and also, the acting on the screen as well. Yeah,
I want to make it exciting, but I also want to bring a level of humour to it as well. I think there's good character beats and, some interesting humour in the characters and some of the voiceover and stuff like that, which is just really funny.
I was going to touch on the comedy as well, because I think that's really important in this film. But there is a lot of gore to keep the horror fans happy as well. I mean, there's one scene involving, without spoiling, a household appliance. And the bloody scenes did definitely look fun to make. Are they always fun to make, those scenes?
Oh, totally. I mean, that's I can't resist. It's like I say, that's definitely a hangover from horror movies. That it's really fun to start splashing the blood around and start doing with practical effects and things like that. So yeah, that stuff is hilarious. I love it.
And a lot of stunt work as well in this. Can I ask you about that? Because I would imagine it's quite a difficult thing to get right. I suppose if you've got the right team, it's easier. But from a direction perspective. With you being the director, is it a headache dealing with stunt scenes? I suppose continuity plays a big part of that, doesn't it? Which you have to get right.
It's certainly not a headache. I love doing that. I love working with the stunt performers and the stunt coordinators on everything that I've done. I love to get as much practical stunt work in there as we can, and for me, it's a real pleasure. The only hassle is not having enough time and money to spend that more on that kind of stuff, and you end up having to rush things, which is not good. But we do what we can, and when you've got great people around you, they pull their weight and put in the graft. And also it helps having actors, obviously, like Sean Pertwee and Philip Winchester, who've done a lot of action stuff before, who know how to handle firearms and things like that, so you don't have to worry too much about that aspect with them, and they can get further into the stunt work and further into the action, because the more that we can use the cast, the less we're having to fake it somehow. So
yeah,
that's always better.
Yeah, you mentioned that great cast as well, and I was air punching when we had the arrival of Stephanie Beacham, a very potty-mouthed Stephanie Beacham, actually, I have to say, which I thought was definitely top marks for me. I was ticking the boxes, because we know a lot of people, obviously the Dynasty period, but obviously she's done a lot of horror, Hammer horror, and she's been doing it for 6 decades or something. So I mean, it's incredible to think how long she's been in the industry.
So it's a total icon, and to have her on board with this character this character was a lot of fun to write anyway, but then when she came on board to play it was just like, it was a perfect meld, and it was just great fun to hear her just like cursing like a trooper. She's
pretty terrifying. How did she react to that language? Because I don't think I've ever heard her use the C word, and she uses it quite liberally in this.
She was fine. I mean, it was never even raised as an issue, and the same with the what she does in the scene as well was like, yeah, fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of violence in her scenes.
Yeah, there is. So it goes.
Sean Pertwee, also brilliant, and he adds the comedic value, going back to the comedy that you brought up as well, which I think is really important in this film. And I think sometimes that balance is quite difficult to get right, because obviously it's an action film, but you don't want it being too funny, you don't want it being too over the top action. But I think the balance is great. There's one scene, I think, where he's trying to get hospital attention, and he keeps bringing up the fact that he's got to get to hospital, and he keeps slipping in the line, can we get to the hospital now, because I need to be seen, which is made me laugh. It was great
Sean
lines.
Is good at suffering. I always make him suffer in my movies one way or another, so Sean is good at that. But no, I mean, he has a great comic touch about him, but it was always the case of all of the humor is played through the characters. It's the characters that bring it out. It's never meant to undermine the story or undermine the action. It's not meant to be satirical about that. It's coming from the characters, especially like things like the voiceover of like, well, what would this East End London girl's perception be of these larger than life characters? And I just thought, well, she just became very honest about it, of like, well, this one is a bit slimy and this one's a bit this and this, and introducing them that way rather than trying to sort of big them up. She's actually kind of taking the piss out of them, which I think it's a very kind of British thing to do.
And there's a great line that Duchess uses, go piss up a rope, which is the best line ever.
Well, I mean, I love British language, the English language. I love some really British colloquial phrases and things like that, and I've always loved go piss up a rope. I think it's a great saying. So I always like to get these things into the movies somehow.
I think it was a song, wasn't it, by Ween, that American rock band, Ween. I think they had a song called Go Piss Up a Rope or Piss Up a Rope. I've never heard that before.
But I mean, I've known it since I was a kid. It's said at school all the time.
Was the comedy important in this story? I'm guessing it was.
Definitely, I think. Well, overall, I wanted to make a very entertaining film. It's not meant to be high drama. I want it to be. It's full of action, and there's some blood and guts, and there's some humor, and there's some great characters. And it's just a fun story. So I just want people to come out feeling better than they went in.
It's a real ride. I really loved it. So I wish you all the best with it, Neil. Thank you so much for chatting to us. It's called.
Thank you.
It's called Duchess, out on the 9th of August. I think we're getting it on digital as well soon after.
It's playing in some cinemas around the UK and on digital at the same time, yeah.
See it on the big screen, though. I mean, it needs to be seen on the big screen. There's lots going on.
I make movies. Yeah, it's a movie, so go see it on the big screen.